It started on a rainy Tuesday night, the kind of night when the city felt heavier than usual, cloaked in an oppressive, wet darkness. I was sitting in my squad car, the heater humming softly, trying to shake off the creeping cold that seemed to seep right into my bones. I had been with the force for nearly 8 years, and while the city had its fair share of weird calls, I was about to find myself on the strangest case of my career, one that would change me forever. The dispatch call came through around 11:30 p.m. A neighbor reported strange noises coming from an abandoned house on Sycamore Street. They mentioned hearing a child's laughter, soft and hollow, and the sound of knocking, persistent, rhythmic knocking. Sycamore Street. The name alone made my stomach churn. That house was infamous. 30 years ago, a teenage girl named Clara Wells vanished from her bedroom there, her body never found. The family had moved out soon after, leaving the house to rot. It had become a magnet for urban legends and reckless teenagers. But tonight, something felt off. I arrived at the house a little past midnight. Rain dripped from the brim of my hat as I stepped out of the car. The house stood at the end of the street, its windows shattered and its roof sagging under years of neglect. The air around it felt heavy, like the entire block was holding its breath. I radioed in my location and approached cautiously, flashlight in hand. The door creaked open with the slightest push, revealing a narrow hallway lined with peeling wallpaper and a musty stench that clung to my nostrils. As I stepped inside, the rain seemed to fade into the background, replaced by an eerie, unnatural silence. The first sign of trouble came in the living room. My flashlight beam caught something scrawled on the wall in faded red paint, or what I hoped was paint. "Help me." The words were jagged, uneven, as if they had been written in a hurry. Below them, a small handprint smeared downward, trailing to the floor. My gut tightened, but I pressed on, my footsteps echoing louder than they should have in the empty house. I turned into the kitchen and froze. A single chair sat in the center of the room, facing away from me. On the table next to it lay a dusty teddy bear, its button eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. I took a cautious step forward, and that's when I heard it, the soft, ghostly giggle of a child. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the room, but there was nothing, just the decayed remains of what had once been a family's home. And then the knocking started. It was faint at first, coming from upstairs. 3 slow, deliberate knocks followed by silence. My throat felt dry as I climbed the staircase, each step groaning under my weight. The upper floor was worse. The air felt colder, thicker, and the smell of decay was almost unbearable. At the end of the hallway stood a door, slightly ajar, with faint light spilling out from within. The knocking resumed, louder this time, as if something was desperate to get my attention. "Police," I called out, my voice echoing unnaturally. "If anyone's here, show yourself." No answer. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. It was a child's bedroom, frozen in time. A small bed sat in the corner, its sheets neatly tucked in, and toys were scattered across the floor as if a young girl had just been playing there. On the wall above the bed was a framed photo of a smiling teenage girl, Clara Wells. Then the door slammed shut behind me. The laughter came again, louder this time, echoing from all directions. My flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows across the room. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and when I spun around, she was there. Clara. She looked just as she did in her photograph, her long brown hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes wide and glassy. But there was something wrong. Her neck was twisted at an unnatural angle, and her lips moved, but no sound came out. I stumbled backward, tripping over a toy car. My flashlight clattered to the floor, and in the dim light, I saw her point to the closet. "What?" I stammered, my heart pounding. "What do you want me to do?" She pointed again, more urgently this time, her eyes filled with something I could only describe as desperation. Against every instinct, I reached for the closet door and pulled it open. Inside, the smell of death hit me like a punch to the gut. A pile of old, blood-stained clothes lay on the floor, and among them, a small, delicate hand protruded. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The room seemed to spin, and when I looked back at Clara, she was gone. But the laughter remained, growing louder and more distorted, blending with the sound of screams, anguished, guttural screams. I bolted out of the house, gasping for air as I stumbled into the rain. But as I reached my squad car, I noticed something scrawled across the windshield in dripping red letters. "Find him." The case consumed me after that night. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Clara haunted my dreams, her twisted form appearing in every shadow, her silent pleas echoing in my mind. Through old police reports and newspaper archives, I uncovered the horrifying truth. Clara had been kidnapped and murdered by someone close to her family, a trusted neighbor. Her body had been hidden in the closet all these years, her killer walking free. But Clara wasn't done. The next week, I started receiving phone calls, static-filled whispers that sounded like her voice. They led me to places connected to her killer, a burned-down warehouse, a hidden basement, a shallow grave in the woods. Each location revealed another piece of the puzzle, and with each discovery, I felt Clara's presence growing stronger, more vengeful. Finally, I found him, the man who had taken her life. He was old now, frail and paranoid, living in a dingy apartment. When I confronted him, he confessed everything, his voice trembling with fear. But before I could arrest him, the lights in the apartment flickered. The air turned icy and Clara appeared once more. This time, she wasn't silent. "You took everything from me," she hissed, her voice a chilling blend of rage and sorrow. The man screamed as she reached for him, and I watched in helpless horror as he collapsed, clutching his chest. The official report listed his death as a heart attack, but I knew better. Clara had her justice, but the cost was steep. Even now, I feel her presence. Sometimes I hear her laughter in the dead of night or catch a glimpse of her reflection in my mirror. She won't let me forget, and deep down I know this case will follow me forever. Because some crimes don't just leave scars, they leave ghosts.